So I was preparing to do a video where I would rank all the Star Wars television shows before Star Wars Andor Season 2 came out, and I noticed something. You can divide Star Wars shows into three distinct eras. So I'm going to talk about the first era, which I'm calling the early era. There's only two Star Wars shows set in this time frame, and this era also is exclusively in the 1980s. So you're like, wait, there were Star Wars shows back then? Yes, there were. There were two, in fact. Star Wars Droids and Star Wars Ewoks. And yes, I do have a couple episodes on DVD. Only two episodes for each series, though. But of what I've watched, and I think I've seen some other ones that I've checked out of the library before, I do prefer Ewoks over Droids. But the point being is, these are the earliest examples of television shows we've had for Star Wars. The products of the time, the animation is not that high quality. They're intended primarily for a young child audience, but they're still very much in 80s, especially with some of the stuff in Droids. They're just the early era, and we didn't get much after the early era. The 90s have no Star Wars television at all. And then in the early 2000s, so 2000 to 09, and then in the 2010s, that's when we get our next era of Star Wars television, which I'm calling the classic era. You could also call this the television era because most of these aired exclusively or first on television and not on a streaming service, which will be the hallmark of the next era. So, the first series I'm including in the classic era is Star Wars Clone Wars, the 2D micro-series that came out around the same time as Revenge of the Sith. This was how the stories of the Clone Wars was first told. Now, the Clone Wars, which is the next series on in this era, is not a retelling of these. These stories are not touched at all. Even the first appearance of Grievous in the Clone Wars does not tell how he first appeared in the war. That's told in these. These are technically legends, but for a lot of stuff, it does still kind of fit. And of course, both of these, if I recall, aired on Cartoon Network. At least Volume 1 did. I don't have anything on Volume 2 on the back. Oh yeah, there's the Cartoon Network logo. Yeah, if you can see it. But the point being is still television airing. Then of course we got the Clone Wars. Now the Clone Wars is an interesting part of this era because its sixth season aired exclusively on Netflix, and its seventh season, years after the show went off the air, aired exclusively on Disney+. But despite that, it's still considered part of the classic era, because when you even watch season 7, while it's structured a little more similarly to how the streaming shows are structured, it still very much fit the layout that the Clone Wars did way early on in seasons 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6, where you have a couple episodes as an arc, but you gotta make sure you watch the arc, but if you miss an arc, you're generally not losing out too much on the story. Though definitely more interconnected story as the show got on later. And then there's also 3 more series we need to mention. Star Wars Rebels and Star Wars Resistance both aired on Disney XD. And then, of course, Forces of Destiny, which aired on YouTube of all places. So while Forces of Destiny is definitely the closest to a streaming show in this era, timeline-wise, this fits into the classic era. And also, much like the classic era shows, we got full, complete seasons. In fact, this shortest season might have been season 1 of Rebels, which only had 15 episodes. And by the way, on Monday, I released my review of the penultimate episode of Star Wars Rebels Season 1, and this coming Monday, I will be reviewing the final episode of Season 1. And that review should be available early to channel members starting Friday, so hopefully I'll have it out by then. If not, you just wait till Monday. And also, there's 2 other shows in this classic era I want to mention. LEGO Star Wars The Freemaker Adventures and LEGO Star Wars The Yoda Chronicles. The Freemaker Adventures is definitely more of a television show style compared to the Yoda Chronicles, but both of them are still part of this classic era of Star Wars storytelling. And I just needed to make sure I mentioned them because I almost forgot and I had to re-record this video. So now we're entering the modern era of Star Wars television. We could also call this the classic era because with one exception, all these shows have first aired on Disney+. So we have the Bad Batch, which of all the shows I'm going to mention, except for this one other exception, is probably the closest example to you still following through on the structures that we had in the classic era. The Bad Batch still has, I believe, like 18 to 20 episodes a season. No, i.e., more than 12, which is amazing to get on in modern television that's on streaming. Some you still get longer seasons off television. I believe the next show I'm mentioning, Young Jedi Adventures, does have larger seasons because it's airing not only on Disney Plus but also on the Disney Channel. Therefore, it's being structured more like a traditional show. I do think it's a problem that so much streaming shows have abandoned the television format in favor of things like binging and all that and shorter seasons, but that's a different video topic and one I will be addressing sometime in the future. But also part of the modern era, we have Star Wars Visions, Tales of the Jedi, Tales of the Sith. We also have Lego Star Wars Rebuild the Galaxy. That's only 4 episodes, but it's still a show, not rather than, or a micro-series if you will, rather than a movie or a multi-part movie or special. But now we're getting into the other hallmark of the streaming of the modern era, live action. Before this, in the classic era and the early era, we never had live action Star Wars shows. We have, of course, The Mandalorian, which was the first forte of Star Wars into live action shows. And then, of course, we have Book of Boba Fett along with this, Obi-Wan Kenobi, Star Wars Andor, Star Wars Ahsoka, The Acolyte, Scouting Crew. All these are part of that modern era, and none of them are episodic and in fashion. The closest is The Mandalorian, where you will have some adventure of the week stuff, but even that show has an overarching story, and if you miss a crucial episode, you are not getting what's going on. And that's, I think, another hallmark of most of the modern era shows. If you miss an episode, with the exception of probably Star Wars Visions, you are lost. The closest might be Tales of the Jedi, Tales of the Empire, because if you miss an episode, you'll be confused in the arc of that episode, but you won't be confused with the other episodes in the show in the other arc. So that is one thing where you probably won't get as confused if you missed something. But near all these shows, if you miss something, you are lost. Now, I don't know about Young Jedi Adventures because I haven't seen it yet. It probably actually follows a very episodic format because it's guaranteed for a young, and I mean a young child audience on Disney Channel. See where parents are just putting something on to distract their kids. That you can probably, they probably still have episodic, but you miss one episode of any of the shows, pretty much you lose track. And that's another hallmark of the modern era besides the streaming. So that's the 3 eras of Star Wars television, early, classic, and modern. Are there going to be more eras going forward in the future? Without a doubt. Potentially, we might even be able to divide the modern era into 2 sub-eras as well, but I've not done enough research into that yet or planned it out. These are just my initial era thoughts for Star Wars television. If you have different ways you would like to divide these shows into production eras, please let me know. I would love to get a bigger discussion going. Or do you think it would be better to divide them more based off of how the stories are being told? Because in which case, there's kind of only 2 eras. The episodic era or the semi-episodic era and the serialized storytelling era. And some of the shows kind of blur the lines between the 2 with Star Wars. So I would love to get this discussion going and continue it in the comment section down below. Thank you for watching my video. I do hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please be sure to give this video a like and share. Also, consider subscribing to my channel to stay up to date on all my latest videos. In the meantime, thank you for watching, and as always, have a good day, a good night, wherever you are. May the Force be with you, always.